Hello, and welcome to this talk about understanding data binding. My name is Dominik Lubański. How can you see on the screen? You can contact with me through my GitHub profile or on our WarsawJS meetup group. Before I begin, I would like to share with you about my contribution to the data binding. Those are my two projects that I'm working on. First one, NEC, is a library that extends Backbone.js functionality. It adds event-driven data binding, dependency injection module, and doesn't overhelp us for creating logic in the view. And the second one is Papillon, is a smart change detection library, which I have finished last month. It's a part of the bigger project that I want to create. But this library just uses frozen state of the objects between repaints of the browser and provides difference between these states. I encourage you to see these projects, contribute, and of course give a star if you like them. So let's back to the main topic. I will be talking about understanding data binding. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is data binding? So let's see what is the definition of this concept. Of course, from the Wikipedia. Data binding is the process that establishes a connection between application UI and the business logic. If the settings and notifications are correctly set, the data reflects changes when made. So the key element of this definition is the connection. So we have two parts. One of this is user interface, and the other is the business logic, and the connection between these two parts. Of course, we have also the data that flows between these two parts. And the second sentence in this definition in Wikipedia says also that it can mean that when the UI is changed, the underlying data will reflect that change. Such a feature is commonly known as a two-way data binding. I will talk about this later. But how we can explain in a more understandable way what is the data binding? The definition says about three elements: data, logic, and UI. And we will focus about the central element, which can be divided to the following sections: module, view, and controller. Of course, I'm not on the screen is not a representation of an MVC pattern itself, because the frameworks use some kind of different patterns. But I wanted to show you that we have to create connection with data, which is the model. We have to create some view, and of course we have this core business logic which connects these parts. But also you can see that one thing is missing here on the screen. There's no links between these elements. So we know what are the parts of the data binding, but we don't know how to connect them between these parts. And there is the answer for these links. Change detection connects all the parts together. And we can say that it's the most important link in data binding, because there are also other links between these parts. But this change detection mechanism is the most important one. It provides a way to create automatic data binding. It reduces the redundant code that we don't have to create over and over again. And also it gives the possibility to create frameworks where we can bind without using the JavaScript code at all. So the next question is, how is it implemented? And I choose three frameworks to show you example of these implementations. I choose them because they are very different in the change detection mechanism, and also they are commonly used. So I think you are familiar with them. So it will be the Backbone.js, AngularJS in version 1.x, and React. We will come back later to this slide to sum up everything, so you don't have to look on the right side of the screen. We will start with Backbone.js. Backbone is using an event-driven change detection mechanism. How you can see on the left side of the screen, models and collections can produce events after the change inside of these elements. And looking on the red box, UI event callbacks when they come from the UI can invoke set method of the model. When that set method is called, so we change the property of this model, but also the special event is triggered. So the set method trigger update event. Then in the Backbone view, we can listen to these changes and react to them. In this example, a view reacts to these events and call render method, which are my method. It's not especially said that I have to call it render, but it's very obvious to do that. So we call the render method which produce our view, which replace the element we are using in Backbone view. And this ends our loop. So how you can see, the arrows goes in one direction. But we can say that Backbone is two-way data binding because we react to the changes of the model, but also the UI produce the events that are changing the model. So the loop is in one direction, but we have two-way data binding. What we can say about AngularJS? I have to admit that it took me a very long time to create this diagram, because the process of data binding in Angular is very complex. It has many layers that are connected in different ways. So this diagram only shows a part. It shows a part of the whole data binding process in AngularJS, especially change detection mechanism. So I didn't say before, but I created a trigger thing on the diagrams, so you know where the change detection mechanism starts. Sorry for that, I just didn't say about it before in the Backbone.js diagram. So we start here, then change detection starts with the apply method. And I think that many of you would say now, no, I don't use this method using AngularJS. And this is true because the AngularJS is doing for you. They invoke this method inside of the directives they created for you, like ngClick, show, hide, and other directives. They just call this method especially inside of these directives. So this scope apply is invoked. Then the digest loop goes through the registered watchers inside of the scope object. So for now, I say just in few words about the scope. It's an object that can contain raw data, so we don't change them. But the scope has extra functionality, which I explain. So scope apply would just say that something has changed in the scope, because inside of the controller or directive, we can change the things in the scope. But AngularJS doesn't know what has been done. So it doesn't know what has changed. And this digest loop is going through the functions that checks some values that we want to know if they changed. So the digest loop is not looking through all the things inside of the scope, only those things that are connected into the view. So this is the reason why there are the arrows between the view and the scope, because when the template is created, some expressions are connected with the watchers of the scope. So digest loop is going through these all functions and checks if something changed. When it's changed, it's called the callback, which can change, of course, the view inside of this template, or the view, so changing UI. So for example, ngShow will add a class, special class, which shows some element or hide it. After this callback is called, when something changed inside of this function. The disadvantage of this solution is that we can have endless loops inside of the scope. Because the function watch, the first argument of this function can be an ordinary function, that we can do anything what we want. So in the side of this function, we can incrementally change the scope. So every time the watch function will be called, we will change the scope. So the scope, this digit loops has to be done over and over again because something has changed. So if something has changed, the GCast loop has to be called again. So this is one of the problems of AngularJS. But of course, there are advantages of this solution. Because we have a fully automatic data binding and we reduce much code of creating applications, especially that applications where we have a lot of forms and a lot of screens where just the users see some data that comes from the API. So this is why the business very like AngularJS. And the last example is the React. And this concept is a little different. In React, change detection happens in two levels. First one is inside of the React component, which is on the left side, and also during the virtual DOM reconciliation process. And we're starting with the UI event that comes from our UI. This callback inside the React component has to call special method setState. This method changes our state of the component, but it can be a whole different object. It's not like the scope. When we change something in Angular, we change something inside of the scope. So we have one controller, one special inside of that we changes. In React, we just replace the state to the new state. So React knows that the state changed. And then, of course, it changed state property of the component and also invoke render method. This method has to create our view. But this view is not producing normal DOM objects. There are special virtual DOM objects. This gives React possibility to do this reconciliation. This is the magic inside of React that I would say. Because the components create special objects which are reconciled, so it means that they are checked if there's a difference between the state that was before and the state that we have now. So we don't compare real DOM with the virtual DOM. We do that inside of the virtual DOM between the states of the component. So this component is checked if something changed inside of that, and then React produce special methods that changing real DOM, but only the parts that has to be changed. This gives the possibility to create just render methods, render and re-render React component every time we call this method, because it's very fast, like I say. And in virtual DOM, the other parts are done. Of course, there are many other things about these frameworks that I could say here. And there are more things that has to be done to have efficient framework. So, of course, I am focused on only on the change detection mechanism, because it's very important to understand how it works. Okay, so I hope you and me know now how it works. So there are the three frameworks, and all of them have a trigger action. So nothing happens if we don't trigger something. In Backbone, we have to set some property inside of the special model. In AngularJS, we have to call the apply method or digits, but they encourage to using apply. And in the React, we have to call setState, which change the state inside of the component. But of course, there are differences in these implementations, because Backbone is centric on the model. So we have some special module which has to wrap our data inside of this model. AngularJS is using raw data, but also has special expressions, scope, special module which has to be used to create this connection. And last, React using real raw data, which is just a raw object, which is the state of the component. But it will render everything, but it also push the changes and change detection to the virtual DOM. So this is things how they work, but how can we use these implementations in real life? For this presentation, I wrote this really simple application using these 3 frameworks. So this is the comparison through these all implementations. Here on the screen are the main objectives of the application. So we have a shared asynchronous API for fetching temperature, form for adding address, list of this added address, and the 4th thing is update and remove button for every address that we add to the application. And I will briefly show the source code for you. I'll try to do it briefly. So first the thing is the forecast shared API. It's a simple object that has constructor, which can use and add address and callback. Inside of that, I call the Google Maps API because the other API, forecast.io, needs a special location. So from the address, I take location and then create the function which is called load. And you can use it to update the temperature of the object, which is of the instance of this forecast. So this is simple. And this is a thing that is inside of these 3 applications. So I will not tell you about every line of this code. Just I want to show you some lines that are connected to the data binding, to the change detection process. So of course in the backbone we have to create special model for using data. So there is a forecast property, which I call it when I create the model. But the most important thing is on the line 12, which is called the set method. And this changes the temperature. So there is also load method, which use the forecast API, which I show you on the last slide. And it's called a load method, which of course will eventually call this set temperature to new temperature. But how you can see, we have on the 22 line set temperature to undefined to just check that we are updating our temperature. I also using the collection to show you how that it should be used, but in this example it don't have to be. And this application has 2 views. One for the item and one for the app. Item has some events, template, and when it's constructed, the view are listening to the changes of the model and of course calling the render method to just render itself. And when the temperature is inside of the model, of course it produces the meaningful information, but where it's not, it just say loading. And our app view is the same thing about the events and template. And when we create this view, we create a new collection, listen to adding elements to this collection, and create once only template. I create this inline 96 property to pushing the item view to the app view. We have submit, and here on the line 107, we have collection method add, which we add new address. So this is it. I will show you that this really works. Okay, so this works, of course. Okay, maybe New York. Maybe we have some from stream from New York. Okay, yeah, we have better temperature. So when it's loading, what is the thing about the data binding here? What we can say is that when I press the load button, I start the process of fetching new temperature, and what I showed you, the temperature is set to undefined. So the view is re-rendered with loading sentence. And then when the data comes, it's re-rendered again with real temperature. So AngularJS code is more simple, but separated to the two files. I created special model constructor, but it don't have to be in the real-life application, but it present the data that I created to the backbone to a better understanding. So this also have a property address, forecast, method load, which do the same thing. Oh, sorry. And we have a directive, my forecast, which will connect the template to the view. So we have a scope. In the scope, we are creating collection, which is ordinary array, and the submit method, which create our model. And the very special line is in 33, because my forecast API is not inside of Angular module. I have to call scope apply by myself. If I would choose to work with HTTP special module inside of the Angular, I would not have to do this, because the promises when they produce these modules are invoking apply method for you. So this is the thing that starts applying and checking the change detection when I add address, because the temperature is coming asynchronously. And also remove. This also works, so I will not show it for the not spending so much time. And last example, forecast in the React is little different, because React encourages to use the components and not just raw data that will be represented inside of the component. So the component has some properties which represent data, which is the state and props, like it was on the diagram. So this is something different. But line 14 is representing the same thing that was on the screens before. So we have set state with new temperature and handling some kind of events. And in the side of the render method, we produce our view. So this is the mess up in JSX that we can combine the HTML. It's not a real HTML, but this is producing virtual DOM objects. But it helps in React to building the component. And we have the app class, which is the component which has inside of that our items. And here we have also line 67 has a set state when we are changing our items. So the difference between this one and the two before is that in the first one and the second example, I push new data to some kind of object. But here I just replace it. So React encourages to replace the state to the new one. I of course in this example use the same array, which is this dot items in line 51, but it don't have to be. It can be a REST API response, which can be also new raw data that comes from the Ajax call or wherever else. And also we have the render method. So we every time we recreate our view. So every time we just has to iterate through all the items of our list and create the addresses for that. But the React in the reconciliation process will ensure that the components, nested components, will not be recreated. So it's not like that I will add new address. There will be no other new calls Ajax for this component for all the components. So, because if we will come back to the item component, there is a component did_mount method. Which call the forecast API. So every time when the component is registered in the real DOM, it calls this method. But if you would start this application and add new address, it's not like that we add new address and the to address will call again forecast API. Because the React creates component only when it needs to be created after this reconciliation process. So the components in the React are not constructed before the reconciliation, but after. And this change is significant and has to be taken for the programming, because this part is very important here, because without that we could mess up our code. I will not just go to the deeply with this situation, but I encourage you to go to the documentation of the React and read more. So last part of the talk is, of course, the questions. I encourage you to ask some questions.
They can be asked in English, it's preferred, but if you want, you can also ask in Polish. All right, we have one. Oops. No, please wait, please.
Yeah. Okay, so which implementation is the best in your opinion between the?
Okay, so question is what is the best? There is no best. There's no.
In your opinion.
In my opinion, this is my opinion. There is no best solution. I have no so much time, but what I showed you, the NEC project, why I created it. So I was doing some project it's 1.5 years ago, and I just changed the framework from 1 to 1 because I don't like some parts of them. So eventually I just were coming back to the simplest. And it was the spine, which is the fork of the backbone. But then because I started the NEC project with the spine, but then I just go to back. Because I just realized, I just like directives on Angular. So I want them in the backbone. So I write some code that do it for me. And then I realized, okay, the scope is great, do it. So I just do it in the backbone scope because I really liked the models inside of the backbone and something like. So to sum up, there are no the best solution, I think. It's really depends on the project. If the project is simple, use this simple framework. Because if you leave this project and someone else will come to this project, the start to coding in the project will be simple. But if you need very complex things, maybe Angular or React or other ideas are good.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, we see.
My question is about React. So if a React component have just a set state method, so if we have a component for an application view, and this application view is quite complex, so when we get data from the server, the whole view will be re-rendered. Am I correct? It will be all DOM will be recreated from scratch, or it will update partially somehow. If we get a lot of data from the server.
Okay, so I don't hear a question good, but I
this
think
way?
I know.
Super. If we get a lot of data for a component from the server, and the component itself is quite complex, will it update in the whole or just parts of it? Will the whole DOM will be re-rendered or just parts of it?
Okay, so the question is about re-rendering the view inside of the method and kind of re-render everything or changing the data from the API.
Yes, we start the application and move a request to the server. Now we show something like loading, and then we get data, and then we'll probably get another data if somebody else change it. Will at this moment the whole view will be re-rendered. For example, we have a chat application. Somebody else writes a new message. we get it from the server. We call it set state, and the
Okay,
whole.
I understand the question. Like I said when I showed you the code of the React, there are some mechanisms to prevent the code that is expensive or where the code is calling Ajax calls. So this method, when did mount React mount component, the component did mount, is called only when the component is really recreated. So when the state or the props of the component are changing, the component itself is, it knows that something changed, but not recreate itself again. So this method, this component did mount, is called only once. So, and every component is recreated in the states of own inside of this component. So if you will create the whole component for application and some nested components which have also Ajax calls, so when the state is provided by the props, even if you render all the application, these components will stay like they were before, because the state not change inside of this component. So this prevents. Also, there is a special method if the component has to be updated. Should be, I'm not expert of the React, but there is a method which React calls every time when sets change, and if you return the false, it leaves because you say directly that nothing changed. But this can be danger, but they encourage to use them if you have very complex code, synchronous code to render the view.
Thank you very much. And did you have a chance to try React Native that allows to make native apps, native mobile apps from the same framework?
No.
Okay.
So the question was if I using React Native. No.
The last question. Okay. Oh, I saw.
So the question is here.
Sorry. You are?
Why you don't like React?
I didn't say that.
What part?
I didn't say the two. So the question is why I don't like React.
You say there is no one.
No, the best friend. Okay, so I not prefer the one. I really, in my work, I'm working with the framework that I really don't like. But I know that because I not choose them. Choose this framework, but I have to work, and I agree that some frameworks have some advantages and bad sides and good sides. But with React, some would say that they are recreating something strange, compiling the HTML with the JavaScript code or other things. But I will not say that React at all is bad. So for your question, but there are some parts that maybe could be done different. So this is why my second project, because in my head from some time is going some process about creating some more specific for the HTML5 things inside of the browser, more more things that are in common of using the HTML. But no, I did not like React.
Thank you.
And the last.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.